You know, this film really has a challenge. It has to balance being accurate and respectful of the source material and the scripture, while at the same time it still has to tell a compelling, exciting story. Can one of the producers or maybe the screenwriter talk about how you struck that balance, and was there a sort of a responsibility, a burden of responsibility to sort of get the story right, particularly when you have some recent sort of Hollywood-produced Bible movies like Darren Aronofsky's Noah or Ridley Scott's Exodus that got some pushback because they were maybe a bit too revisionist in their telling?
Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick. You worked very hard on that.
Can you repeat the question?
We wanted to tell a really entertaining story, be respectful to chapter and verse in Scripture, and also really maintain the audience's attention with contemporary storytelling. So the perspective of Clavius being an investigator and having the history, the biblical history and the events unfold in front of him through fresh eyes would then translate to a fresh audience. And in that genre, you can tell a contemporary story, which is a story that's 2,000 years old. Does that answer the question?
And we vetted this very heavily.
Yeah.
The very first draft, we made a lot of changes. But the idea was the audience is ahead of Claudius. They know the details. So they're just sprinkled in there.
So
that we see the film unfold through his eyes as he is learning them for the first time. But we're ahead of him. We know who Mary Magdalene is. You know, he doesn't. He just kind of knows her. He has shorts. Like you're the guy. Sorry, but you know what I'm saying. It's just sprinkled in there lightly, and that's what Kevin brought to it as well. He even distilled it more.
But as for vetting, I think Mickey and Rich can speak to the vetting process, which was
And these guys screened it for many
very detailed.
Yeah.
Look, when you intersect scripture with historical fiction, it is a potentially dangerous place to live. You know, there's great reverence for scripture, and you want to treat it, that source material, with great honor and respect. So, what all of us did in this process was, you know, from the script as it got close to production script, circulated it amongst various pastors and priests and leaders in the faith community, and got their feedback and made changes, even up into production. I think there was, you know, phone calls. When are you shooting this scene? Because we really think we need to change the dialogue here.
Many.
Yeah. And then through the editing process, you know, it was bringing the edited film in front of pastors and leaders. And we even had a situation where, I don't know, Mickey, how far past the end of production did then, you know, based on some feedback, Mickey and Pete went out and shot another scene of the movie. Like, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months later.
Yeah.
So we were just really careful because, you know, we all treat it with great respect, and we don't want to you know, we're accountable on earthly and heavenly levels. So, I'll just say that.
You know, speaking to making changes to the film, I was actually privileged enough to see an earlier cut of the film, and one scene that changes at the end when they witness the risen Christ healing the leper. In an earlier version, there's still the moment between the leper and Christ, but there's not a physical curing. And it really reminded me of a scene many of you had mentioned, The Robe. But there's a scene in that film where the Richard Burton character goes up to a lame woman and says, I thought Jesus healed you. And she said, he did. And he's confused because she still can't walk. And it was obviously speaking to more of a spiritual healing. So I was wondering, what was the decision to change that scene into a physical curing?
I'll take that because you're right, we did change that, and it worked both ways actually. And I think that the audience, when we tested it, really felt like with the Sea of Galilee and all the times we talked about miracles, and we knew that Jesus had performed miracles, I think they were really wanting to have that feeling that they could actually see a miracle at that moment. So when we did it, everyone felt like it was the right thing to do after we put it back in, and people really enjoyed having that feeling because the music builds up to that as you go from Sea of Galilee around the where they're eating and all that. It just felt like the right time to do it.
Now, you had actually not been in contact with the actor who played Jesus in the film until you had your first scene together. Was that intentional to be there in the moment when you first meet each other for the first time?
It was intentional. I think it was, I mean, Cliff and I didn't speak about it. I think it was a natural intention. Some actors are intent on keeping the concentration and the quality of interaction for the camera. And it's easily dissipated when the camera is shut off and you have many hours where people, you know, shoot the ball by the coffee machine or what have you, and everything can be dissipated. And I think both Cliff and I are the type of animals that when we get engaged, we go the whole way. And it was all about preserving that chemistry, and it meant that we didn't have eye contact, and we didn't have any form of physical, verbal interaction, and it just meant that we savoured the quality of that meeting, because essentially, what would it be like if you were alone with Christ? What, you know, it would be a pretty momentous occasion, and we wanted to savour a thread of that for the camera. So you get it for 1 or 2 takes. So yes, in answer to your question, the first time we ever met was on that rock in the desert.
You also said, I read somewhere, that you had to invent the character of Claudius, that you didn't bring yourself to that role, but you also didn't want to over-intellectualize it. Can you speak a little bit about what you mean by that?
Well, he's, as said before, he's a fictional historical character, so I had to work hard to bring my own level of authenticity, and that was working with the guys in Rome, the gladiator school, going in at a physical level. It was a physical key, working with a detective in Malta, because there's a series of interrogations, and I've got 2 kids, and when they're naughty, I'm terrible at interrogating them, so I thought I'd better see a professional about this. And so, again, imbuing the character with a particular conditioning and mindset, and his mindset was born from his knowledge of warfare and what it was to be a soldier that through the ranks got to the position of a tribune.